Hello, welcome to I believe this is the fourth episode now of the Daughters of the Corner podcast. My name is Lauren, and today's guest will go by the name of Jen. Hi, Jen, how are you?
I'm good. You?
I'm doing well. So, first, start off by telling me like what interested you in even like wanting to join this podcast.
Yeah. I feel like this has been a long time for me coming. Um, I've been out of the game for maybe 19 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been through a lot in the last 19 years. And
Yeah.
I've been wanting to have a voice in these kind of conversations because I see a lot of people around me being affected by human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and mental health, and like just a lot of stuff. And it hurts my heart
Mm-hmm.
to see people going through these things. And I feel like I have so much experience in it
Mm-hmm.
that I just want to reach out and help, you know?
Yeah.
But right now, just being a mom and healing has been my main focus.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So you said you've been out of the game 19 years now.
yes,
So tell me, like how old were you when you got in the game and how long were you in the game?
yeah. Um, well, I actually left my house at 14, not on my choice. Um, and I got into working in strip clubs underage, actually.
Mm-hmm.
My boyfriend at the time, he got me some fake ID,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I got in with him.
Okay.
Here in Canada, I think legal age to work in a club, I think, don't quote me, I think it's 19
Mm-hmm.
or maybe older. But I got in right at 17.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so, and I worked in a strip club for about good 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Yeah,
so tell me about I guess when you met your first pimp or whatever, how that
yeah.
happened.
Um, it was actually, I met him at a mall.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was talking to some of my friends who I was staying with in a shelter,
Mm-hmm.
and I hadn't seen him for a long time. And he was just telling me how life is good and, how it's all going for him. So we're just having a conversation there at the corner at the bus stop. And the guy who I ended up being in a relationship with, he was about 10 feet away listening to our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as my friend from the shelter had left, this guy came and we started talking,
Mm-hmm.
just small talk. How are you? Kind of laughing. It seemed very natural,
Yeah.
very organic. And then things went really fast from there. At that point, I was not working in no strip clubs. I was raised actually, I came from a Christian background, a Christian family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when I got kicked out of the house at 14, I lived with two guardians.
Mm-hmm.
I lived on the streets and I lived in a shelter. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I met my friend, was in the shelter.
Okay.
Um, and I had just gotten into my own place.
Okay.
So we met up at the mall here and we were just talking and laughing and just talking about life, like how are you? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And and then in the distance, you know, my that guy
Mm-hmm.
was listening to our whole conversation. Um, Within, I would say, maybe 3 weeks after meeting um, the person that exploited me,
Mm-hmm.
I was working in a strip club.
Okay, so he was the one who kind of encouraged that then?
Oh yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
How did he persuade you? Because a lot of something that I like to kind of like have the listeners know is how, different ways of how people are trafficked. Some people get, caught into like the romance scheme. Some women are like literally kidnapped and picked up off the street and stuff like that.
right,
But
right.
the experience that I'm familiar with the most because it happened to me was like, a romantic partnership that turned into that. And it sounds kind of similar in
Oh
regards
yeah,
to what you went through. So
oh
how did
yeah.
it go from like you guys dating to him kind of, pushing you to become a dancer and then, whatever else?
Okay, so within the first hour, I allowed this person to drive me home.
Hmm.
Um, this conversation went from 0 to 100 very fast.
Hmm.
You should be my girlfriend. I should take you shopping. He immediately said, I want to be with you.
Yeah.
4 days later, I lost my virginity to him.
Mm.
Um, so I was emotionally attached at that point,
Yeah.
thinking this is love. And coming from my background of not having a healthy family,
Mm-hmm.
seeing violence, seeing a lot of stuff, I
Mm-hmm.
thought this was love.
Yeah.
He said, I love you first. He just like took me to the mall and just bought me everything I wanted, a new cell phone, shoes,
Mm-hmm.
just loved on me in that sense,
Mm-hmm.
material wise, and very good at talking. And he told me from day one, I want to be with you,
Mm-hmm.
have kids with you, and do life with you. And the way he made it like it was going to be just me and him, you know.
Yeah.
I had a roommate at the time, and we were both sharing the room, paying $600 back then,
Mm-hmm.
300 each. And actually, my roommate just up and left one day.
Oh wow.
So I ended up getting stuck with the other 300, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how it got in. And this all happened from the day I met him till the day I got into dancing, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So it happened really fast. When he mentioned, "Oh, I have a way you can make money," I was all ears
Yeah.
and very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, my heart was already caught up with this guy, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand. Mine was about 3 months of kind of the same. Like I met my trafficker on Facebook and like I was very vulnerable. I was an alcoholic. I was very desperate for like male affection and just very like, promiscuous, I guess you could say. So when I
Yeah.
met him and like especially like with the other relationships that I had, the guys weren't very helpful in a way where like I was the one who always had to pay bills. I was the one who was always picking up everything. So he did the bare minimum and paid like an electricity bill one time and I was just like, "Oh my God, like he's God's greatest gifts to earth or whatever." So yeah, it was after like 3 months of I guess I would say him grooming me and things falling apart and like losing my job and losing custody of my son and my car breaking down and my lease going up, like all these things happen. And yeah, so like within 3 months. And in when it comes to God, three is it's a very telling number. So how long was it that you were dancing before he pushed you to start doing, did you ever do full service or like was it just did he just have you working in the strip clubs? Like tell me more about that.
Okay, so I never stepped into a strip club in my life until I met him.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Um, when I got in, he only had me doing it like, oh, it's just me and you. Let's hustle. We'll do it together.
Mm-hmm.
Only strip clubs.
Mm-hmm.
Later on down the road, I was feeling like, convicted, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
So I started running escorting services,
Okay.
started building businesses here in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
adult entertainment. So we would get girls, buy a little shirt for $30, put them on a website, and bachelor parties, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of after hour parties downtown,
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things. So, but when it came to like escorting, no, he
Okay.
never pushed me into that area, but I know a lot of girls who went down that road.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you went from dancing and then being convicted to then doing the kind of like hosting, I guess, escort sites and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
At what point were you like, okay, like this is not something that I want to do, or like how did
Mhm.
you kind of, I guess, escape that lifestyle? Well, where was the point that you were like, okay, this is enough, I don't want to keep doing this kind of thing?
So when it got towards the end, I would say my 4 year mark, it
Mm-hmm.
was starting to get to my soul because I was starting to see this was more of a transactional relationship.
Mm-hmm.
This was not, I would look around at my friends and see how, most of my friends were getting married. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, we're not living the same life. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely living underground here. I had a visitation actually in the strip club. Some people can laugh at it. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But my heart was really crying out for help. I was screaming. I didn't know how to get out
Mm-hmm.
because not only was I involved with this man,
Mm-hmm.
who was also what 7 years, 6 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
It was also organized crime too.
Mm-hmm.
So It's not like I could just step out because I was worried, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
because he got me in underage and he got me fake ID. The police were already watching me for so long.
Mhm.
So I was very on their target sheet, you know?
Mhm.
So crying out to God, and I went into the strip club one night and, thought I was all that,
Mhm.
gonna make my quota. And I go upstairs and there was a guy there, like a regular guy,
Mhm.
um, very clean cut, muscles, stuff. He said, can you take me upstairs? And I said, sure. So we went upstairs together, went into the room, and he sat there and he looked so sad. And I'm like, why are you so sad? Most guys are really like,
Mhm.
they're happy. And he didn't give me any eye contact, but he said to me that he was an angel. And I was mocking him. I was like, no, you're not an angel.
Mhm.
Like, you're not. And I basically said, why are you in hell with me then? Because God's
Mhm.
not going to send you here because this is
Mhm.
this is this is not a good place. This is very unwholesome.
Mhm.
And I actually didn't believe him.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he said, God's very sad. And I said, well, we all got our battles to face, don't we? So I
Mhm.
was about to dance for him, and he told me no.
Mhm.
And he said, don't take off your clothes. And I'm like, well, why are we here? He's like, I had a message to give you.
Mhm.
So I left the room thinking, this guy's just whatever, like just another superhero.
Mhm.
And as we're leaving, there's only two exits from the VIP, the one I was going and the way he was going. And
Mhm.
I kid you not, I looked over my shoulder and this guy was completely gone,
Mhm.
gone. And
Yeah.
I'm like, there is no way that that man, by the time I turned my head to say bye, like it's not like a 5-minute walk down the hallway, say
Yeah.
bye. It's like regular, like you talk to someone, you
Mhm.
turn, okay, bye. He's gone.
Mhm.
And it changed my life. And I asked God after that, I said, you get me out of here and I will stay out of this place.
When that
And
happened, what was your reaction? What did you do after that?
I went in the changing room and I was laughing. I'm like, girls, there's an angel who see me. Like
Uh-huh.
I was
Yeah.
mocking it.
Yeah.
Even though, even though I cried out for help, you would think two and two
Mhm.
would go together.
Yeah.
I was mocking it.
Yeah.
Now I sit back and I'm like, wow, you
Mhm.
know? And within a few weeks after that, I left the strip club and I never went back,
Hallelujah.
never went back, except one time he convinced me to go
Mhm.
to the same club, just
Mhm.
try it out, he said, I went and I went in immediately seeing the porn on, the movies and just everything. And I just knew I outgrew it.
Yeah.
And I immediately started to bawl and cry, and I asked God to forgive me, paid the DJ, and I left. And I've never went back since. And it's
Wow.
been 19 years, and I have never gone back. And yeah,
I I thank God for that. I wouldn't know how I would act if I was in a situation and somebody told me they were an angel. I believe God did
right.
send me an angel, and I met this man named Hosea when I was like in the streets of Nashville. And for anybody
Wow.
who knows, the book of Hosea is about, God tells this
Yeah.
man to marry a prostitute. So I was like, wait a second. So, but like to have somebody come up to you and like say, hey, I'm an angel of God, and
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I would be shook, and I would
Yeah.
probably would have reacted the same way you did. Like,
Yeah.
what was, I guess, this guy's reaction when like you were like, I'm done, I'm not going back? Like, how did that relationship
Um,
fizzle out?
so that's when I started noticing I wasn't important no more.
Hmm.
And I started getting pushed off to the side, and I noticed other girls starting to take my position.
Yeah.
I actually, to get into more details, I ended up having 4 children with this person.
Hmm.
So it turned into a different kind of control.
Yeah.
Um, I was kind of pushed over to the corner and it wasn't planned,
Yeah.
I'm going through the healing process, but I'll tell you right now, trying to leave, I
Hmm.
finally left him 4 years ago.
Hmm.
And that's because he was in a big court case and he actually got sentenced 15 years for human trafficking.
Wow.
For 4 other girls came forward
Hmm.
and they testified. And of course, he's the victim because
Hmm.
he says, well, we're running a business. They came and they wanted to work for me, but
Hmm.
we both know how that all works out,
Yeah. Yeah.
So during the 19 years I was praying, I got scripture a little confused because I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm.
Because I desired to have a family so bad, I'm like, okay, I'll pray and fast for him. He'll change his life.
Mm-hmm.
But God told me so many times, like, he's a counterfeit. He's not your real husband.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I com continued to pray, like, God, get me out of this. And it wasn't until this, I would say, so maybe 7 years ago, I was praying and I thought God was ignoring my prayers. I'm like, God, why, why? And I even had somebody speak over me, and they don't know me from Timbuktu.
Yeah.
And they said that God had purposely blinded this man's eyes towards me, and that
Mm-hmm.
God sees all the pain and the hurt that I've gone through,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing will be wasted.
Mm-hmm.
And I prayed for 3 years, God, how do I get out of this? I have kids with him now. Like, I'm trapped in this sense.
Yeah.
And I also felt like I had to live up to an image,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But when I was in court with him, the police officers were actually saying, we've been investigating him for 3 years. So this
My
whole
God.
time I'm thinking God's ignoring me. My
That's what I'm
phone's
building
been
up a case.
tapped,
Just wait.
like making sure that, like, because God, I kept trying to leave so many times before, and I'd always go back because he's such a great talker.
That's
And
one thing they got is the gift of gab.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, he
So
said,
yeah,
you've been praying for 3 years. I've been building up a case against him for
yeah,
3 years.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And to go back before the 3 years, he did time before that for another situation.
Hmm.
And I thought that would wake him up. But
Yeah.
if anything, it made him more stronger, more slicker, more smarter,
Hmm. Yep.
almost more bitter towards authority. And that's what really made me disgusted.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was the sin disgusted me.
Yeah.
And to watch these girls going through this, and I seen my little 17-year-old, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old self in these girls, and
Yeah.
I said something needs to change. And
Yeah.
I I just want to help prevent, if we can find places for, girls who don't have family,
Hmm.
um, safe places where they can feel like they can go there instead of
Hmm.
going into these broken relationships, because
Yeah.
these guys can read us so fast.
Girl, I didn't even know I was like when I understood that these men can like see right through us. I thought like
Mhm.
when I met this guy that I thought I was like, you
You
know,
won the lottery.
not even just that, but I'm like, okay, like he saw things about me that I didn't even see. I had no self-awareness when
Yeah,
I met him. So
yeah,
now looking back at it and like seeing, especially because once you've healed, you notice things differently. When God gives you the gift of discernment, you can look at other people and kind of see that they're grieving or seeing that they're oppressed by certain things. These men have that gift. I guess
yeah,
I don't know if you want to call it a gift of discernment, but at the same time, this is the battle that we face is not against flesh and blood, but it's against spiritual principalities.
yes,
And spirits can
yes,
read other spirits. They can see
yeah,
when they're, in the same kind of playing field, like, okay, you're facing demonic oppression. Let me make it
yes.
worse kind of situation. And they can see that. But
Oh
like
yeah.
something you said that I had to grapple with for a little bit too when I left my trafficker was like, okay, once God revealed himself to me and I saw that he could save me, I'm like, okay, cool, you can save him too. I had prayed for this guy.
Mm,
I've never fasted before in my life. The first
mm,
fast that I did, I would not say it was for him. I just did a fast, like a 3-day Esther fast in between me leaving because I was just really confused and I was like, I don't know what to do.
yeah,
And I had heard about fasting. I'm like, okay, maybe if I fast, I can get some type of answer or direction or something from God because I need help. I'm confused.
yeah.
So I had left him already at this point, and then I did a 3-day fast, and I ended up going back to Nashville on my own accord because I was like, okay, I can save up some money, try to get my life together, do something because I didn't want to go back home to Florida empty-handed.
Mm-hmm.
So ended up going to Nashville. And while I was in Nashville, I kept having like these experiences with God. Like God was doing things and like moving and giving me signs. And I was just like, okay. And then one of the days that I was there, um, my trafficker had actually come to the hotel where I was at because it was like a common hotel that we, like us and like our little group of our little clique or whatever stayed at because it
Yeah.
was like we could work there. We knew we wouldn't get in trouble, whatever. So my phone I was playing music on my phone, and I guess he had parked close to my room and my phone connected to the car, like the Bluetooth in the car.
Ah,
So he knew I was there. So I freaked out because there had been a couple of days where I couldn't afford to pay for my room because I just couldn't swallow like doing the work anymore. Like I was just so disgusted. I ended up
yeah.
using his credit card to pay for the room for like 2 or 3 nights. And I had money, so I was like, I'm gonna go give him $500 just so I can feel at ease because I feel like he knows that I've been spending the money. He's gonna be pissed off. I don't want to put myself at risk to get harmed or get beat or anything. So I'm just gonna go give him half of what I got. I had like $1,000, and I'm gonna give him 500 just to keep the peace. And when I went to give him the $500, he was so, I want to say kind because it wasn't genuine, but he was acting so kind and just so loving and so whatever. So me being the Delulu person that I am, I went back into the hotel room and I was like, "Oh my God, my prayers are working. He's being nice and
Yeah.
he's doing this and that." And I was like, "No, that's not what that is. No, that's not it." And I was in that mind frame for at least a good day because I was like, "Oh my God, you're gonna save him for me."
Yeah.
Because like I had just
Yeah.
got to the point where I was like, "This man is it." Like I did all this stuff for this man. We've been in this for 3 years now. It is what it is. God, if you're gonna save me, you're gonna save him too. And then
Yeah.
that's when I met that man named Hosea. And
Wow.
when all that stuff happened, and I just saw how he acted about it because I actually had contacted him because when I was like riding this little scooter and I ran into this man, he had told me he didn't have like clothes or anything. So I was like, let me call this guy because I know he has like clothes that he doesn't wear. He keeps them in the trunk. Let me just call him, see if I can get them and give them to this homeless man. And he was like, okay, cool. So I went back to the hotel. He came back with me to drop the clothes off. And when I started like, oh my God, he
Yeah.
told me his name is Hosea. I had just bought my first Bible the day before. So that's what I even knew. That's
Wow.
how I even knew what the name Hosea was.
Wow.
And then I like was telling him, I was like, this is a sign from God. Like God is talking to me. He laughed at me and I was like, oh no, you're not. This is not what I thought it was. So then, yeah, I had that moment of revelation. I went into the room, I read the book of Hosea, and I was just like, wow,
Wow.
okay. But then, God was like, you have to give him up. Like he's not,
Wow.
he is a counterfeit. Like
Yeah, counterfeit.
he is, and when I first heard that word, I didn't understand what it was, but then when you just think of a counterfeit like a dollar bill or something,
Yeah.
it's almost an identical replica of something that God has for you. So yeah,
Yeah.
if God intends for you to get married, the enemy's gonna try to send something that looks like, that looks all cute, but then once you get to the meat and bones of it, you see that it's not good for anything. So like
No.
not everything that glitters is gold. But
Mm.
yeah, when I first heard that counterfeit word, I was like, what is that? And then when God
Yeah.
explained it to me and then I did more like diving into it and like how when you pray the enemy also hears you. So if you're praying for a
Yep.
husband and you don't wait on God's timing and you don't have discernment and you don't even know the type of man that God wants to bring to you, the first thing
Yeah.
that pops up, you're gonna be like, oh, this is an answer to my prayer, and
Right.
it's the okey doke from the enemy. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's crazy. But
Well, that's hilarious. We both prayed and fasted
hmm
because I had a couple times where I was like so happy. I'm like, oh, we got a breakthrough a couple times.
yeah. hmm
And no,
Mm-mm. That's not how it
no,
works.
no.
No matter how much you believe in your mind that you like, sure, it's not to say that God can't do it. It's not impossible. But at the same time, those people have to want to change.
Yeah.
I was, and I don't want to sit here and try to put wickedness on the spectrum because sin is sin.
Yeah.
We know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are definitely some things that traffickers do that the women who are victims would never in their mind process to do that. I would, if I had not ever met him, I would not have ever tried to, encourage other women into the game or do anything like that
Right.
because looking at it
Right.
for what it is, it's like you see it.
Right.
It's abuse, it's manipulation, is
Right.
taking being taken advantage of. So like there's things that they would do that they wouldn't even bat an eye for. They wouldn't
I
care.
know.
Like he didn't
Oh,
care to put his hands on me or to force me to do on any
yeah.
of these things. So to think that somebody like that would want to just give up everything because they see you have to and they're like, okay, yeah, I want to be with it. They didn't care about being with you in the first place. They just wanted whatever
Exactly.
you could do for them. So I
Exactly.
had to like accept that too and be like, okay, because there was so much like, and for me, what finally like woke me up to the type of person was that he was betrayal. Like I found
Right,
out he was sleeping with I'd say I call her my closest girlfriend in the game. Like
right.
she was also an escort and her and I had
Yeah,
met through him, but
yeah,
she had her own pimp and you know, we all traveled together, but we became really
yeah,
close and I considered her like my best friend. Only
yep,
to find out that they had been sleeping together and he had been gaslighting him. No, it wasn't the
yeah,
beatings. It wasn't the
yeah,
fact that he had me selling my body for money. It wasn't the fact
yeah,
that he promised me things and you know, he
yeah.
never accomplished them. It was that that made me say, I'm done. Like,
It's the heart thing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of my story too before kids. He was pushing us. We actually had a girl come stay at the house with us
Mm-hmm.
under his mom's roof.
Mm-hmm.
And for like a month, you want to hear how twisted this was? We would pray together. Like, who does that? Like,
Yeah.
pray and ask God to bless us as we go into the club to work. And I'd come home at like 2:30 in the morning and he wouldn't be in the house. She's not in the house. And I think that's where a lot of the mental health really started to come up to play for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's what did it for me too, was
Yeah.
realizing that, you know, these guys are not faithful.
Mm-mm.
um, that is their job occupation.
Mhm.
The more the better.
Yeah, literally.
And but the thing is that sometimes I don't know for you, but for me it was, and if I can be truly transparent, it
Mm-hmm.
was almost at a place where it was a false identity.
Yeah,
I wanted to
100%.
be the number one girl.
A
I wanted
hundred
to drive
percent.
the nice cars.
Yeah.
I enjoyed being loved on because when we were in public, he was very affectionate. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody knew that we were together. It's not like he was hiding us.
Mm-hmm.
But when the doors were closed, that's when
Mm-hmm.
the abuse came, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I started surrendering my life to Christ and I started hearing this word, like, you're a new creation
Mm-hmm.
and the old things are passed away, like God started really healing me.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually started to disgust me. Like
Yeah.
I was starting to get actually appalled. And I
Yeah.
never thought I would come to the day where I would be appalled and grossed out.
Mm-hmm.
But it happened. And now it's like, oh, it's so gross. The
Yeah.
sin is gross,
Yeah.
you know, the
Yeah.
sin.
I remember that the day when I had that revelation. It was after I had did that 3-day fast and I went back to Nashville and I was trying to, you know, get money.
Yeah.
This guy, I guess he was a client. He came in the room and in the middle of this, I was just starting to feel like I was being held against my will, you know, even though it was like I set it up for him to come and, you know, whatever,
Hmm.
whatever. And then afterward, he starts talking to me about, you know, wouldn't I ever want to get married? Wouldn't I? And I'm like, this is
Mm,
the craziest situation ever. Cause like, granted, I've
yeah.
had, you know, I've had clients that wanted to be superheroes, like you said, like they
Yeah.
want to come in and take you away.
Rescue.
And yeah,
Yeah.
they like that's not really something that can be done. Like you have to want to save yourself. You getting rescued
Exactly.
by a trick is probably like the next worst thing to happen because there is gonna it's gonna become a whole mess too because they're not right in the head obviously and we're not right in the head so it's a mess but when that happened and then afterward he was talking to me about like wanting to get married I was like I'm not doing this anymore and I think literally that
No.
was like my last date ever I did it because I was just like I'm
Wow.
not I can't I literally couldn't
Yeah. Yeah.
so that happened, and I was just like, okay, I am disgusted. I don't want to do this. And I think that was like the same day that I had went to buy like regular clothes because all I had
Yeah.
was like work clothes. I had
Me
skimpy
too.
outfits,
Yeah.
booty shorts, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to feel covered because I feel so naked
Yeah.
and so exposed.
Modest.
Yeah, so I literally went and just bought like sweatpants and t-shirts and sneakers, and I was like,
Yep.
okay. And then that's the same day I bought the Bible, and I was just like, all right,
Wow.
I'm I, and it took a while because it didn't just happen overnight for me. It wasn't, you know, just
No.
one day to the next. Like I'm just, all right, God,
Same.
you know, God had to chip away at my hard little heart to
Yeah.
convince me to like give it all up, and he's
Yeah.
still doing it to this day. There's
Yeah.
still things that I'm like, I just
Yeah.
had a moment the other day where I was. I would say that I was praying, but I wasn't really praying. I was more like arguing or trying to like play tug of war with God. We're like, okay,
Yeah.
you wanted me to give all this stuff up to come be here with you. And,
Yeah.
I'm still facing things that I was struggling with mentally because it's most of it is mental and like,
Yes.
financial here and there or whatever. And I'm just like, I never had to worry about this before. Like,
Exactly.
and I know in my heart that I would not ever go back to that because
Yeah.
I want, especially once God has revealed the truth to you, it's not something you can
Yes.
just put down and say, okay, well, I don't care
Exactly.
what God's truth is. I'm gonna just go do it. Like, if you can do
Exactly.
that, then I pray for your heart because
Yeah.
I can't. Like, there's
Yeah.
just it was just a moment where I was sitting there and I'm like trying to rationalize like, God, but I'm not there yet, but I'm in this place. It's been 3 years now, and I'm
Right.
still struggling with certain things, and I'm just like, when is it gonna end? Like,
Mm.
when is it gonna be like, and I think that I have a problem with, and I realized this, I
Mhm.
want to say today,
Mhm.
well, not really today, but it's just like piece by piece. Today, I just
Yeah.
finally, I guess, accepted it. It's like
Yeah.
I have trouble submitting to authority. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
a lot of that is even what ended me up being in the game because I didn't want to do what
Yeah.
my family was trying to encourage me to do the right thing, get a job, stay away from these guys, don't do drugs, don't do this. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
who are you? What are you trying to tell
Exactly.
me? And now that
Exactly.
God is trying to tell me not to do certain things or to do certain things, there are times where I surrender. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I want that. But
Yeah.
then there's other things that I'm just like, oh, I'm not giving that up yet. I don't want to do that.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I end up wrestling with him for weeks or months or however long. And, you know, and then you come back to
Mm.
this point and it's like, you have to remind yourself how far you've come. Like, how did I even get here in the first place? Because I was living a life where I was miserable. And I said,
Yeah.
God, okay, I don't want my life anymore. I want your life. But then when it comes time for you to give up parts of your life that you're so attached
Yeah.
to take whatever God is trying to give you, it's like, but I'm not ready for that yet. But
Yeah.
if God says you're ready to give those things up, it might not feel right in the moment. It might take,
Yeah.
a couple days or however long of you wrestling to accept or
Yeah.
surrender. But just know if God said you're ready to do that, or if you're ready to let that go, or if you're ready to go on to this next whatever it is,
Yeah.
he's gonna make it happen, even if you gotta
Oh,
end
he
up in the
will.
belly of the fish. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, for me, he was building a case for me
Yeah.
for those 3 years because he seen I was struggling to leave,
Yeah.
you know? Sometimes God will purposely put our backs against the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and the surrender is actually laying everything down at the altar.
Mm-hmm.
And those pieces that we want to hold on so bad are not going to be the pieces that he wants us to keep.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to redeem us,
Mm-hmm.
and the broken parts that we have now, we can, go around and help other people what
Yeah.
God has done in our lives. But
Mm-hmm.
that process is not pretty, and that's why a lot of
Mm-mm.
girls go back.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
lot of girls don't cry out for God,
Mm-hmm.
they're crying out for the 1-800 number.
Mm.
And between me and you, we know it's the only way out of this is it's a spiritual war,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's only going to take Jesus.
Yeah. Literally, because that's what it took to change my life completely. Because trust me, I tried to leave my trafficker without God. I tried to do it on my
Yeah,
own, and I ended up right
yeah,
back, if not
yeah,
worse, because
yeah,
once he saw that I tried to leave and I didn't have any success with leaving him, and I kept
yeah,
going back, it just got worse and worse every time.
yeah, yeah,
So it's gonna be like it's like that saying that people say that God is gonna allow somebody to hurt you until you have no choice but to let it go. He's gonna let that
exactly,
situation break you down until you have no choice but to walk away from it. Like,
exactly. Well, for my situation, I almost lost my kids
yeah.
because it got so bad to the point where it came he said, she said, and I was sitting there and I'm thinking, am I really putting this man above my children?
Mm,
And worse, I'm putting everything above God. Like,
mm-hmm,
he got me out of this, and now I find myself in a new situation,
mm-hmm,
and I was in bondage for so many years,
yeah.
thinking that I could change it with my fasting and my praying.
Mm-hmm,
So I can really understand when you are saying giving it up and not and having a problem with authority, because when you're in that life, you're used to making your own money, your
mm-hmm,
own hours, doing your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
and it is really about surrendering.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something. The day I truly surrendered and I said, I trust you, God, he gave me Joshua 1:9.
Mm.
He said, haven't I commanded you? And that just
Be
something in my
strong and
brain,
courageous,
I
girl.
was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, like soldier talk. Like
Yeah.
he is actually commanding us
Yeah.
to be strong and courageous. And
Yeah.
I
He's like, it's
knew
not a
this,
suggestion.
no, it's a command.
Yeah.
And ever since that day I left, God has provided for me and my children. I've never had to sell myself or anything or lie or steal, nothing.
Mhm.
He has been such a faithful God to me.
Yeah.
And if other girls could just take the step of faith also
Hmm.
and trust God, He's no respecter of person. Like,
Right.
He's not going to just favor you or me and then bypass the other five girls.
Hmm.
He's going to take care of us and we're all going
Hmm.
to click up
Yeah.
and we're going to fight this. This is a very demonic time we're living in this world
Yeah.
where good is now bad and bad is now good. Like
Yeah.
the demand for sex, the demand for pornography.
Hmm.
Um, our culture tells us that when we get married, the man has to go to a strip club and enjoy his last night.
Hmm.
Like it's like marriage is supposed to be a holy thing. Like God
Yeah.
gave us marriage, for the
Yeah.
purpose.
While we're on the topic of marriage, I just want to see if you had like a kind of a similar scenario to me because like okay, you said you grew up Christian, I believe, right? And
Yeah.
you had your own things going on at home too. That was kind of the same for me. And I always said I never wanted to get married because I just saw how my parents'
Mhm.
relationship was and it was toxic and they got divorced and I was like, I'm not ever going through that. But somewhere towards the end of my relationship with my trafficker, I just started getting this extreme desire to want to be married.
Mhm.
And that is also kind of like what led me away from, obviously trying to like find a way to get out and get away from him. Cause I expressed that to my trafficker. I was like, I want to get married one day. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
live this life forever. Like, I want to you know, in my mind, what I was gonna do is just make enough money to retire, open a food truck, and then
Yep.
we can get married and blah blah blah. And he used to promise me that at first. But
Mhm.
then I think once he realized that I was like serious about wanting to get married, he was like, well, I'm not ever getting married, so how is that gonna happen? Because you're never leaving me, right? And then I
Mhm.
think there was, even if it was for a brief moment in time, that he just got so tired of me saying that I wanted to get married that he was like, oh, so you want to get married? Like, and in my mind, I was like, if this man were to ever ask me to marry him, it would ruin my life. Like, I know it
Yeah.
would. I know it would. And something just clicked in my mind. I was like, oh my God, he would be even willing to want to extend an offer of marriage to me just to get me to stay. It just shows how crazy he is. And I don't want
Yeah.
anything to do with him. When did you always want to like get married and like have a
Mhm.
family? You did? Yeah.
I remember before my parents separated, I would lay at night. My favorite thing was to read books. I would
Mm-hmm.
sneak on the light and read books and pray. And I would stare at the ceiling and I would ask God, I'd be like, before you come back, can I please just get married and have kids? And I
Yeah.
and I feel like I've almost been robbed of that
Mm-hmm.
because I've been just in a counterfeit relationship for too long
Mm-hmm.
to the point where I'm trying to make the counterfeit the real one.
Yeah.
But I have the kids, but I'm still waiting on for my God ordained husband,
Yeah.
you
No,
know?
I feel that. It's crazy because like when I left, like I said, I left my trafficker. I had this desire to get married, but I didn't know that God could place desires on your heart because those were plans that he had for you. Like when
Yeah,
I left, even after I left, I was like, all right, God, like I just want to get an apartment. I want to get my son back. I didn't really care about thinking about a relationship. I was just so happy to be out of that
yeah,
situation with him that I was like, I don't even care if I don't ever have another
yeah,
relationship. So
right.
I did a fast. I did a Daniel fast because I was staying at a domestic violence shelter a couple months after I had left or whatever. And I was like, all right, God, I'm not working right now. Everybody's pressuring me to get a job. And I feel like
Mm.
I know, I don't want to say I feel, I know that he had put me in a season of like sitting me down and just
Oh no.
resting. And
Yeah.
everybody in my family is like, oh, but you have to get a job. Oh, you have to do this and you have to do that. I was like, I'm gonna do what God tells me to do. So I fasted. I was like, when God tells me to
Amen.
move, when God tells me to get a job, when God tells me to do anything, I will do that. I'm not just gonna listen to you guys tell me what to do because you don't know what I've been through. God knows the correct
Yeah.
process for my healing and whatever he needs to do. So but there was some part of me that was like, they're right. You're broke. You need money. And, so I was just like, okay,
Yeah.
God, I'm going to fast. You tell me what to do. And it is whatever. So I did a Daniel fast. And on the eighth day of my fast, I had a dream where I was walking. I believe it was hand in hand with God. I couldn't see the person that I was walking or talking to in my dream. I was just
Right.
walking, holding hands. And I said, I'm going to buy my house in Brooklyn because that's where my husband is. And I
Mm.
was like, okay, I had done fast before, but I had never ever gotten, I would never say an answer that direct and that clear. And I feel
Mm.
like kind of like in the same way, where it's like, that man, the angel came up to you and said, hey, I'm an angel.
Yeah.
It was so direct that I thought it was a
Yeah.
joke. I was just like,
Yeah.
I mocked it. I was like, yeah, okay. So I stayed in
Mm.
Florida for another 3 months and I got an apartment out there. I got a job and I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even at that job for a month. I started getting carpal tunnel in my hand from freaking flipping food. I was like, what is going on? The apartment wasn't what I wanted. I was like, God, I don't believe this is what you have for me, but I'm gonna take it because I just want my son back. I didn't care. Not even a
Right.
month in, everything was going up in smoke. And, the boss that I had was a perv and it was just a mess. So I was like, all right, God,
Yeah.
what do you want me to do? I did another fast. I did like a 3-day liquid
Yeah.
fast just because I needed direction. And on the third day,
Yeah.
God was like, I already told you what to do. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then Brooklyn
Wow.
just dropped into my mind. And I was like,
Wow.
I guess I'm going to Brooklyn. And the next day I bought my
Amen.
my ticket with my last paycheck and I had no idea where I was
Yeah.
going. I literally just got up,
Yeah.
left behind the apartment that I had, quit the job,
Wow.
literally left the apartment with everything in it, the furniture, everything. I had kittens
Wow.
because I was just like, I'm gonna go, I guess, figure it out, and then I'll come back packing like stuff up. No, God was like, you're going and you're
Yeah.
staying. I got here, I got to Brooklyn,
Mm-hmm.
I got to New York, I got in the airport, and I sat on the floor crying because I don't know what I expected. I expected God to have like a freaking, those people at the airport that have your sign, like, here come Miss Moquette, like come here, like, and it was just nothing. And I was like, what do I do now? So I ended up staying in like a shelter for a year and a half, and God gave me an
Yep.
apartment and stuff. So it was just a mess. But
Yeah.
there's so many examples in the Bible of God giving people promises and then taking
Yeah.
however long to deliver those promises because there's obviously a
Yeah.
process that has to be done, especially for
Yeah.
people who have been through like traumatic experience. He has to strip
Yeah.
stuff away so that way whatever it is that he promised you, you don't ruin it. And I know
Right.
that like even now in the situation I'm in right now, I'm still single. I might
Yeah.
have an idea of who this man is, but I leave that in
Yeah.
God's hands because I'm like, I know I'm not ready yet. I know that there's
Yeah.
still things you have to work on me. And just even with that, the thing of like me having the issue with authority, the man is supposed to
Yeah.
be the head of household and you're supposed to submit
Right.
unto him and he submits unto God. Granted,
Right.
you only submit to a man when he's submitted to God. You don't just submit to a man
Amen.
because he's a man or because he's a male. Because
Yeah.
a man and a male are two different things. But
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there. God forgive me. But yeah, no, I know that there's still things that have to be worked out in me before he can bring this person. Because if not, then
Yeah.
I'm just gonna end up ruining it. So like
Right.
I know I can speak for a lot of I guess other people and say like we get tired of
Mhm.
waiting. We get
Yeah.
distraught, we get feeling like burdened, like, oh my God, it's never gonna happen. But God is like
Yeah.
in the same way that you were praying for 3 years,
Yeah.
asking for God to do something, and we think that God is not moving because we cannot see what he's
Yeah.
doing. You have to
Yeah.
remember things happen in the spiritual before they manifest in the physical.
Amen.
So if it takes
Amen.
God 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 years to do
Yeah.
stuff, just know that whenever it does get delivered to your door, it's going to be on perfect timing. God knows
Yes.
you're not going to ruin it. And God knows that it's the perfect opportunity for that thing to happen. And that's when it's anointed to happen. So even if we
Mhm.
don't think that it will happen or we get discouraged and we allow the
Mhm.
enemy to put all those lies and thoughts into our head that it'll never happen and that God is a liar, God
Mhm.
is not a liar. God is not a man that
Yeah.
he should lie. And
Amen.
hey, listen, we have the desire to get married. God is gonna
Yeah.
fulfill that desire because many
Mhm.
times when we have wholesome desires like that, they're usually because he's placed
Yeah.
them on our heart and he has plans to
Yeah.
deliver them in his timing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
That blessed me. Thank you.
No problem. It blessed me too because I've been very doubtful lately. So I'm like, I love when he uses me to minister to myself too, because I'm just like,
Yeah,
I've been wallowing in self-pity and like
yeah,
self-inflicted depression over the last like
yeah,
6 months just because I'm like
yeah,
been
yeah,
defeated by expectations and like
yeah.
yeah. So
That's the killer is expectations.
yeah.
And then we start backtracking thinking, oh, maybe God didn't say that,
hmm
and we
Yeah.
get confused. And
Yeah.
I think that's the killer.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I hear so many like preachers or pastors saying like, be expectant. How can you be expectant without having expectations? I'm expecting God to do something, but then I get this, I guess this is what they call maladaptive daydreaming, where you come up with how it's going to
Yeah,
happen in your head. And then when it doesn't, you're just like, oh, woe
yeah,
is me. And then it's just like, okay. But yeah, being expectant for God to do something and like having expectations, or I guess, are two different things. So
yeah.
yeah,
That's
but
good.
yeah. Let's see. Where are you now mentally? Especially, okay,
Hmm.
I just want to like kind of go back to how you said earlier, that your I guess your ex or whatever was
Hmm.
convicted already.
Yes, yes, he was.
How does that make you feel? And like where's your headspace?
Um, I've been praying for God to expose everything. That's my prayer. That's what
Mm,
it was 4 years ago. God, I was on my hands and knees,
yeah.
and God actually gave me a prophetic dream when I
Mm,
met him. The day I met him, I I knew how this was all going to end anyways. So I
mm,
don't even know why I stayed.
mm,
Um, but I had a dream that there was 8 rooms, and in each room there was a piece of lingerie. And I
mm,
had a dream his mom was in there. And then it ended up happening that he got arrested because he had a spa and inside had like a couple, like 8 rooms. It was an old doctor's office. And I just remember just saying to God, like God hears our prayers, right?
mm,
And God tells us things, and when He does, we need to pay attention.
mm,
So to answer that question, I've been praying for a way out for a long time.
yeah.
So the prayer that I said is just expose everything.
Yeah.
So he sure did expose it to the point where I could
Yeah.
just walk right out of there with my kids,
Girl.
right
Hallelujah.
out of there with my kids and be like, hey, like they want to take my kids. You crazy? You sit over there.
Mm-hmm.
So he's sentenced. He's got 15 years. He thinks he's innocent.
Mm.
He takes no accountability for what
Of
he's
course not.
done. And that's where my heart is for the victims, like
Yeah.
I just I see what it's like us women, we just want to be loved at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
and these men are just taking that for
Yeah.
a beautiful roller coaster ride. And some of
Mm-hmm.
us hold on a little longer than we need to, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something we need to ask ourselves, like why do we stay in these abusive relationships?
Mm-hmm. I would relate it to like in the spiritual, like a stronghold, because that's
Oh,
what
it
it is. It's
is.
a stronghold. And a lot of
It
people
is.
hear like the term soul ties and they're like, oh, soul ties are not real. You have to remember that like when you're opening yourself up to somebody in that way, you're creating an intimate bond with them. Like whether you believe it or not, having sex with somebody, I think somebody said that like a good acronym for it is like soul exchange. And your soul is your mind, will, and your emotions. Your soul and your spirit are two different things, but having sex with somebody is that it's a soul exchange. So you're creating intimacy with a person, which is why God tells us to not have sex outside of marriage, because you're opening the door to whatever demons, whatever spirits, whatever that person has been entertaining. And if they're not right with God, they're only right. There's only one other way that they're going to be, the Bible says, God says you're either for me or against me. So if you're not with God, even if it's knowingly or unknowingly, you're participating in ungodly or demonic activity. I don't want to say demonic because I
Hmm.
don't want people to like,
I know it's a heavy
so you
word.
say that and everybody's like, oh my God, nothing, not everything is demonic. It is, but
Yeah,
that's another story. But
yeah.
like, yeah, so you're opening yourself up to this and then you're creating a bond with this person that happens
Hmm.
on a spiritual mind level. And then when you try to leave from them, it's
Hmm.
difficult because you're literally
Hmm.
attached to them in a way. Like,
Hmm.
so a lot of the times we as women too like to see the good. There's
Hmm.
I spent way too much time on TikTok. And I don't know if this is like an actual theory or something that they just made up on TikTok because they have habits of doing that. But I think it's called the halo theory or something like that, where just
Okay.
because somebody looks good, we think they are good or something like that. But like just
No, no.
because we see these people as either attractive or like a glimpse of goodness in them, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that their entire being is good. Because none of us are good. Like
Yeah.
we all have ways that are ungodly. We all do things. But there's a huge difference between somebody who's like knowingly doing evil things and wicked
Mhm.
things and attempting to hurt people versus people who are just like either have been through trauma, who are just trying to seek the good and
Yeah.
end up in bad situations because we see even people who are not good as good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes we stay longer because we hope that they'll change. We have this
Yeah.
idea in our mind that because we're capable of change and because we're capable of recognizing these things, that they will too. And a lot of
Yeah.
times with people who are like narcissistic or I think sociopathic or just like people who
Yeah.
have those types of behaviors, they don't take words of advice or wisdom as like, oh, let me change. They use it to change their manipulation tactics. So if you sit there with somebody and you tell them, hey, this is bothering me, that's bothering me, I wish you would do this differently, they won't actually change those things. They'll just make it seem like they changed those things or try to find different ways to try
Right.
to hide the fact that they're still doing those things so you can think that they've changed, but they
Yeah.
haven't. But yes, God reveals all things. Sometimes we have to just take a step back and allow Him to do that so we can see that we were better off not even being in the relationship with these people and move on. Because
Yeah.
some of these people are really, really wicked and they might not seem
Yeah.
like it at first, but you got to get to know people. I don't
Right.
know. Yeah.
It's true.
Are you
Um,
involved in like any anti-trafficking
yeah,
work?
so have you heard of Treasures in LA?
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, I actually, when I got out of dancing, I reached out to them and
Hmm.
they sent me a gift care package. And I've actually been in contact with them for many years. And
Hmm.
the last, I would say, 5 years,
Hmm.
I've been in a special group each week with them.
Hmm.
So yeah, and there was A21. They do
Yeah.
marches. Yeah, so I've actually brought my kids to a couple of those.
Mm.
Part of a lot of organizations like
Yeah.
nonprofit. When I first got out of everything, I felt like I was pushed into a lot of these movements right away.
Hmm.
I was speaking at one point, and they were paying me. But I think I just needed to take time away from all that, which I did.
Yeah.
And I took a year off. And it was just recently, in the last 4 months, I've kind of just been more vocal about my story and what
Yeah.
God has done in my life.
Yeah.
But that's why when you said, he had you in a season to sit down and be quiet and heal and rest,
Hmm.
God had that for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
So now I'm actually in the process of writing a book.
Okay.
I really feel Holy Spirit directing me that way.
Hmm.
And I'm just trusting the process. And I've actually learned a lot about myself as I've been writing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot. And it's
Yeah.
been healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went through that too. He took me through that season of healing started. He actually had me start writing a book, and it is very cathartic. You learn a lot about yourself. You can see yourself kind of like from an
Yeah.
outside point of view and
Yes.
just the whole situation. And yeah, yeah, writing a book is
Yeah.
definitely a very good way to get all those feelings and all that out. Have you already started writing it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm on what chapter am I on? Chapter 8?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know how many chapters you want to write? Do you have an
31.
idea? 31 chapters?
31 chapters. But this is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm trying to put myself in the old me.
Yeah.
So when you're going through a lot of stuff, you don't got time to sit down and read a book.
Yeah.
So this book has to be very strategic in the sense like it's not too drawn out, not too long.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll probably condense a couple chapters because I've noticed a few chapters already leaking into each other's
Yeah.
chapters. So I'm kind of clumping them up.
Yeah.
And my goal is to give them out to women's shelters,
Mm-hmm.
um, and definitely ministry. I
Yeah.
just finished 4 years of Bible school,
Yeah.
um, because I was trying to understand God because I was confused because when I was raised as a kid, we
Mm-hmm.
were in church every day.
Yeah.
So when my parents, when their marriage fell apart, I was like, what is God? Like,
Yeah.
and my family knew what I was doing. They tried to save me in their own way.
Mm. Yeah.
Some tried, some were too passive and didn't try at all.
Yeah.
So I put myself in Bible school so I can understand who is God, you know? But I think
Yeah.
having a personal relationship with Jesus is what's going to give it, you know?
Yeah.
And I've learned that you can have all the book smart,
Yeah.
study all the words and memorize it and pass it, get A+ on all your tests.
Mhm.
But if you don't truly understand the Holy Spirit, like it's, you know,
Yeah.
but it's an accomplishment to me because I'm a dropout from high school
Yeah.
because I went from grade 10 right into the clubs.
Yeah.
So just working on myself, healing, trying to be the better mom. I've
Yeah.
had to undo a lot of stuff with my kids, you know, just
Mhm.
because I made that life look normal.
Yeah.
And looking back now as I see as I'm healing, it was actually not that I was trying to make it normal. I was actually surviving in
Yeah.
hell and
Mhm.
making choices to survive. Now I'm just doing damage control, you know, sitting down
Yeah.
with the kids, telling them, you know, mommy didn't make good choices.
Mhm.
And, you know, this is not a family unit. This is not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, God honors women. Like when we read all the amazing stories in the Bible, I was just reading this
Mhm.
yesterday. God is really with us, you
Mhm.
know? And of course, the enemy is after the women
Mhm.
and the
Yeah.
family units. And
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I
and
commend
right
you
when,
for all the growth that you've been doing and all the
I,
things you just knowing taking every step with God is literally the only
yeah,
way we can get through these things sometimes.
but it's only Jesus,
Yep.
you
Mhm.
know? And I quit smoking marijuana.
Yeah.
Um, I did that. That was a hard one to let go
Yeah.
because that numbed me out. But I surrendered that, and I have hard days, obviously.
Mhm.
But you know, my favorite thing I like to do is put on worship music.
Mhm.
That one's and I love preaching.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
We have a
yeah, I
lot of
think,
similarities.
oh yeah,
Yeah. Every
yeah,
time you say something, I'm like, me too. Oh my God, yes.
yes.
Yeah. I love that though.
Oh, well, I'm proud of you. Look at you, where God has brought you,
Thank you.
you know, in doing this podcast. And because it takes a strong woman to do this, especially when you've
Mhm.
lived through this life and
Mhm.
you really have to be healed and walking with God, because if not, you're going to be triggered,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And so I'm proud of you
Thank you.
and thank you for allowing me to be here.
Mhm.
You know, hopefully this will encourage somebody who's going
Yeah.
through the same things,
Absolutely.
because I know for me, I couldn't have friends. I
Yeah.
was scared. I was scared they were going to be, you know.
Mhm.
I had my first female relationship 9 years ago. So I went through my whole prime, my whole life, you know, with no female friends.
Mhm.
So, and God's called us into community. You know,
Yeah.
He's called us to be around other godly women.
Mhm.
So this is a safe place, you know, for us.
Yeah. That gets rough, especially living a lifestyle and what we live in where it's constant competition between women and like
Yes,
trying to flip the side and like that's not true. The enemy wants
yes,
to divide us because he knows
yes.
that if we work together and we come together as a community, we can accomplish great
Whew,
things.
whew,
But
it's on.
yeah,
It's on.
the enemy loves to make women feel like they're less than because they're women and just trying
Yep.
to attack all of us. And I don't know how many women I know that have, unhealthy relationships with their mothers and just people who are
Hmm.
very closely related to them. So like, well, overcoming that and then being able to
Yeah,
minister to the same women who at one time you felt like were your competition is crazy. So yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. And it's very easy to get burnt out, which is, where I guess I've been in the last couple months is just being burnt out, not so much from,
yeah.
the work it is that I do, but just trying to come to a place where it's like, okay, I have to be consistent. Cause I
Mm,
was like, being in the game had my mindset. It was like, okay, it was a one and done. Once I got at least one thing accomplished, there was,
yeah,
a reward on the other side of it.
yeah,
There was money
yeah.
instantly. And
Yes.
doing this type of work, it's not like I can just do an interview with somebody and then I get paid for it or I'm able to,
Right,
give a stipend to that person. It's
right,
an effort. And that has
right.
been, I think, like the hardest thing for me is like not being able
Yeah,
to see the fruit of my labor
yeah,
like instantly. And I'm just like, I'm over
yeah.
it. But thank
Uh,
God for mercy, thank God for grace, and thank God that he keeps pushing me and that he
mhm.
allows me to cross paths with women like you who encourage and who can tell their story and then re-encourage me and reignite my faith
Yeah,
because sometimes it gets burnt out. It really does.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
iron sharpens iron, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I'm just so proud of you. That's all I can.
Thank you.
I'm just,
The feeling's
I'm just
mutual.
proud. Good.
Well, I do want to say thank you for coming on today, for speaking with me. This is the first
Okay.
podcast I've done that I guess we've talked about God a lot, not to in any way undermine any of my previous guests.
Hmm.
It's different when you can speak to somebody who's been through very similar situations and
Yeah.
who's willing to testify to the goodness of
Yes.
God and who's
Amen.
at that point in their journey where they can look back and say it was God who brought me
It
through.
was all God. It
Yeah.
was all God.
So thank you so much for joining me today. I thank God for women like us who continue to push forth and try to encourage other women to not make the same mistakes we made. So again,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless.